Hi, I am Menashe Customel, the president and founder of Enthusiast Gaming. Uh, EGLX is our ticker on NASDAQ and the Toronto Stock Exchange. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're not clueless about the company. You have some context, either a little bit and you're doing more research, or you've been following us for a while and you're looking for more insight. And I'd like to really do a either weekly or bi-weekly, depending on my schedule, discussion, just giving some of my perspective and trying to enlighten people. And hopefully whatever I say could not only provide insight for investors or gamers, but also just general entrepreneurs, people who are have their own startup and are looking to get a little bit of insight and experience provided to them of how to grow their startups and just the general business world. Just a quick disclaimer. I know probably a lot of people would love for me to provide insight into stock prices, into the capital markets, or into revenue about the company, financials, things like that. Of course, there are security commissions, there are regulatory boards, which do not allow for me to talk about those things, provide my opinion on share price, value of the company. I can't disclose financials prior to anything that's publicly shown or give any kind of selective disclosure. So if you're looking for major public reveals of anything, that's not something I can do on here. That said, I still think that I could provide a little bit of behind-the-scenes perspective, insights that can give a little bit of color and understanding into what we're trying to build and just kind of the way that we're thinking about things. And the truth is that we have a very skilled, experienced executive team, and everyone has their own kind of way of looking at things. I have my own way. And part of what's great about a company is when you could have so many different viewpoints that we each fill in each other's gaps, provided that a team is able to listen to each other. So I'm just providing my perspective and my way of my lens and my pair of glasses and how I look at things. And hopefully, people will find that illuminating, and as long as everyone's not completely bored and gets a little bit of insight from it, I'll be happy. So part of the reason why I wanted to start this discussion now is that we are launching a pet project of mine, a passion project. For the past 10 years or so, I've been dreaming about this project, and it's finally able to get to an alpha stage. So this is kind of like a personal dream of mine coming into the world, being born. The birth of the company itself 10 years ago, September 2011, that was already an exciting thing. But this is really where I hoped we would get to, like through the evolution. If we could look to kind of like our famous mentors out there in terms of business, folks that we look up to, Jeff Bezos started off with his books, and he really had something else in mind. I think that we've really just been growing to get to a certain scale that would be exciting, that we could then have the opportunity to create even and take everything to a new league, to a new level. So for me, GG is taking it to that new level. We will be launching that. The alpha, at least, is going to be at the end of this week. It's going to be a very closed alpha just for the first week or so. Just make sure that it's able to handle the traffic, but it's still going to be very internal while we just make sure that major bugs are taken care of and before we let in the public. So it'll probably be at least another month before we start taking in our second wave of users in the alpha testing. We got to get past the bug stage. So to give a little bit of a understanding of GG and what we're doing, I'm not going to speak about the features yet. I'm going to speak a little bit more high level, and next week we can talk more about features. So here's how I look at Enthusiast Gaming as a whole, as a company. I think that we're built around really three layers. There's kind of like the inner core layer, then another layer built around that, and then another layer built on that. At the center, the core of it, if you look at the entire gaming industry, I've always looked at it as millions and millions of micro niche communities. And a niche community doesn't necessarily mean that it's small. It could be millions of users. So a niche community in gaming doesn't have to do with the scale, it has to do with the scope. They have a narrow scope. So for example, if you have a retro game that everyone still is madly in love with and has like this cult community, that is a self-organizing community around a specific passion within gaming. If you have one of the millions of YouTubers or the millions of Twitch streamers that has built up an audience, that is a gaming community that's micro niche. It could still be large in scale. It could have 10 million followers, but it's still narrow in terms of its scope, and its focus is around this gamer who plays a specific game. That is a community. I look at any influencer or streamer who's built an audience as a community. I look at any website that has built a forum or has built a readership that is loyal over time, or a subreddit or a Twitter following. All of these things to me are micro niche communities. And the gaming industry, the landscape is incredibly fragmented, incredibly diversified, that it's spread out across everywhere. Aside from the fact that you have all kinds of different platforms like a Steam and an Xbox and a PlayStation and an Epic Games Store and a GOG store and Ubisoft's store and EA's Origin and Google Play and Android and the Riot Games Store or Battle.net. The platforms in which you can play games are enormous, which means that if you have an account, an identity, or a library, it's living across this entire span of platforms. And then the way that people socialize and aggregate to find other people who are passionate and share common passion with them also are self-organizing to all of these micro-niche communities. So what you have is really a very non-unified, I don't know if that's a word, ununified, non-unified, so we'll have to check for me. But there's no unification across all of these. So at the center of what Enthusiast Gaming is that we don't really care about a specific game title. That's not our IP. Our IP is the gamer, the gaming community. That's our product. We want to be the ones nurturing, aggregating, acquiring, launching these niche communities that need some love, need some capital, need some business acumen and professional organization, and help them to be unified and to take them to the next level. And we don't just because there's so many millions of gaming communities, we're not trying to take the tiniest ones, we're trying to take the largest ones that really make a difference. So if we acquire a website, it's because we feel this is the leader within a specific space. This is the largest female gaming website. This is the largest mobile gaming website. This is one of the largest YouTube platforms or networks that monetizes enormous influencers, or this is incredibly large influencer on Twitch. So we're trying to aggregate these communities, nurture them, help them grow and scale. So that's on the product side, the community side. On the monetization side, we also then have large Fortune 100 companies who are learning more and more that they can't ignore the gaming world. They have to find a way to get in there, engage directly with products and advertisements and content that resonates in a genuine way with the gaming community. And what they see is that you have this talent agency over there, this platform over here, this website, this ad network, and that makes it very hard for a really large Fortune 100 company to come up with a proper campaign, marketing strategy, and then scale it in a unified way. So a lot of what we're creating is, aside from the fact that we're trying to provide these gaming communities and help them grow, and aggregating the largest amount of them aside from Twitch, it's pretty much Twitch and us up there, on ComScore in terms of overall reach worldwide. So Twitch and us, and of course YouTube, are trying to provide that. The difference between, let's say, a Twitch and a YouTube is that we're providing a 360 type of a strategy where we work with the influencers. We have our own production studios. We have our own events teams. We have our own content creators, writers, producers, animation studios who are creating this type of content, unifying it, and providing it as something that Fortune 100 companies can have a way to work together with the gaming communities right on the grassroots levels. That's core number one of the company. On top of that, around that, is layer number two, which we call the flywheel. The flywheel is that we don't want to just look at these micro niche communities on their own as its own silo. Yes, each one can live on its own, and it has its own little ecosystem, and it's healthy on its own, but a flywheel is really taking all the different properties you have and making them leverage each other to create a business efficiency that gives you competitive advantage. So if you are able to have someone within one community, and then they're bored, they're ready to move on, they finish consuming the content, they finish watching the live stream, but then they're able to pass into another area of it, or it could be a subscription, it could be more content, it could be data, it could be any type of other aspect. Or if we bought, let's say, Addicting Games, but then we plug it into our influencer base and have the influencers work together, get a rev share within the games within Addicting Games. And Addicting Games then work within our subscription model. So then instead of having a 50-cent lifetime value or annual value of a user, you're able to then leverage that and grow a much larger LTV and ROI from a user. So the flywheel is something that so many companies have done successfully. If you look at like a Live Nation, they've done it really successfully, where they had they had deals with all kinds of different venues, all kinds of different performers, but they were really just taking some money off the top from the commissions on their shows. But then they bought, I believe they bought StubHub, and then they were able to start getting the data from the ticket side of thing. And then they were able to kind of plug the two together, and one could play off the other, and then they started to really grow this flywheel exceptionally and start to really have a vertical supply chain. So I think that what we have right now is we're building this ecosystem that has this competitive flywheel that makes one community plus one plus one plus one equal 20. So there's a much larger competitive advantage. And what's really great about that is that our team that we have in the senior leadership and executive leadership, we have really skilled people. Our COO, our CEO, our CFO, our head of sales, our tech team, and the head of tech, the head of the content team. They're seasoned professionals who know how to do this. And what that's done for myself is it's really allowed me to start looking at layer number 3 and kind of the more the innovation projects that are really most, as an entrepreneur, that's really what captivates me the most. I like disruption, I like the innovation aspect. So the fact that our sales team is just pounding out campaigns and doing such a wonderful job, and the tech team, the subscription team, and the data team, that provides me the ability to then turn to the third layer. The third layer is GG, is a tech layer, a social tech layer, wrapping all of these diverse niche communities into one unified piece of technology, which you could think of as a social network for gamers. You could think of it as a gamer's companion app that anytime they're playing any game whatsoever, this is like their buddy app that provides them with insight and information and an ecosystem that they know who they're playing with. It collects the data for themselves so they can see their own stats, where they fit into the world, how to find other gamers. And in the future, we'll go through a lot of that. But at a high level, what I always saw within social networks is that before Facebook came around, before MySpace, before the LiveJournal, and that whole world started, there was a concept of an actual physical social network. Every person had their social network. It could have been at the gym, it could have been at their church, it could have been at a class in school, whatever it was, they had a common passion, and through that, they were able to meet other people, break the ice, and start developing a network of social ties to other people, which provide them something that's just a basic common need of being part of a community and having social relationships. What Facebook did is essentially said, whatever your identity as a regular human being, wherever you went to college, whatever your movie interests are, give us your basic information about you as a regular person. Now you can start connecting with other people in a digital social network. We'll take that same concept that we had in the real world and we'll allow there to be a digital way of doing this. So now you could connect with your high school buddies that you haven't seen in a long time. You could share pictures if you just just had a new baby or got a new job, or your pet did this funny thing. You could connect with your grandmother connect with her friends. So there's a whole personal world of your personal identity, and your personal identity is connected to a social network of other people with their personal identity. Then if you take a look at LinkedIn, what LinkedIn did is they said, well, you don't just have a personal identity, you also have an identity at work in your career. Like, for example, let's say someone started off at McDonald's and then they got a internship at some accounting firm and then they ended up running some large fund. But then they use that to launch a startup in cryptocurrencies and they're doing really well over there. Whatever the path is that they took, they have an identity that you could look at which says, okay, that was their career, that's what they're all about. And then they're able to connect with other people and say, well, these are the friends I made along the way. And then it affords career opportunities or just general business opportunities, whether it's business development, getting a new job, sales, sharing content about your company and what you're working on. So you have a social network with a specific identity of a human being within the professional world. It's different than Facebook, which is your personal identity. This is your business identity with your social network built around that. So my hypothesis, just from seeing millions of gaming communities, has really developed into the theory that I believe very strongly in, that every gamer has a gaming identity. It's the first console, the first controller that they ever picked up, the first game that they fell in love with that really got them started in gaming. It's how they developed from there. What are all the games that they bought? What are the games that they put the most hours into? Who are the friends that they made along the way? What's the gear that they use? Who are the influencers that they watch on YouTube or on Twitch? Who's the current crew that they play with that they consider their go-to crew? Have they started doing some side hobby of animation within gaming, or building their own indie games, or trying to play semi-competitively, or starting a competitive team, or joining tournaments, or joining LANs? There's a full world that everyone has as a gamer that makes up their specific gamer identity. And people who are non-gamers don't even understand that a big portion of a gamer's life is real identity that they may just be completely unaware of. And what I wanted to do was to create a platform where you can finally show off your identity that captures all the stats, all the different platforms, unifying from everywhere to provide one handy profile that really shows off what you're all about as a gamer, that you can stand behind and be proud of, and then allow you to connect with other friends and discover new people to play with as well. Create that social network around the gaming. I'm going to get into it a lot in a lot more depth once we announce and we launch the alpha. We'll go into a lot of the specific details, such as a trust ranking with accountabilities to get rid of toxic trolls, cheaters, smurfs. So no longer just having this wild west of gaming, but having more of a new class of gamer that has accountability behind them and experience and who they're connected with, along with LFG, many other features, which we'll get into soon. But I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for this new product, and I hope everyone gains something from this discussion, and hopefully we'll continue. In the future, I will do some Twitter Spaces where we can have live Q&A. Again, I can't discuss the stock, so I'm sure a lot of people want to ask about that. It's not something I could talk about, but sometimes we'll do some pre-recorded discussions where I'm able to share a lot more. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks.